A rumor circulating in Washington that something massive was about to drop, something buried, something explosive. At first, no one took it seriously. Just another day in the circus of American politics. But that all changed when Jasmine Crockett walked through the courthouse doors. She didn't come quietly. She never does. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. And yet, she walked straight ahead, calm, focused, and dangerous. You could feel it. Something was coming. Something the Trump legal team didn't see coming. And within hours, the entire courtroom and the country was left stunned. Jasmine Crockett had something they didn't expect: receipts. But this wasn't just about documents. It wasn't just about legal arguments. It was about power and truth and reckoning. The case was already a media spectacle. Donald Trump was once again facing the music, this time over alleged financial misconduct tied to foreign dealings and post-presidency enrichment schemes. His team had assembled their top legal bulldogs. Leading them, Victor Ramsey, a longtime Trump loyalist and high-powered attorney, with a reputation for ruthless cross-examinations and a disdain for congressional oversight. He thought he could steamroll her. He was wrong. In the first hour of testimony, Ramsey swaggered through objections, sneered at witnesses, and played to the cameras like a man who'd already won. But he didn't count on Jasmine Crockett's patience. She watched, waited, took notes, and when her moment came, she stood up slowly. No theatrics, no grandstanding, just presence. "Mr. Ramsey," she said, voice clear and sharp. "Do you remember what you said on April 3rd of last year, under oath, during your client's deposition in the Manhattan case?" There was a pause, the kind of pause that tells you someone's about to get cornered. Ramsey stuttered. I'd need the transcript to be certain of the exact wording." "Oh," Crockett said, lifting a folder. "Don't worry. I brought it." She handed it to the clerk, and suddenly, everything shifted. Because what she read next didn't just contradict Ramsey's earlier statements, it obliterated them. He had lied. Not once. Not twice. Multiple times. And Jasmine had the timeline, the statements, and the documented evidence lined up like dominoes, just waiting to fall. The courtroom fell silent. You could hear people breathing. You could feel the tension crawling up the walls. The judge looked over his glasses. Reporters stopped typing. Ramsey looked pale. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words cut deeper than any yell could. "Are you telling this court," she asked slowly, "that you didn't know these payments were routed through a shell company based in the Cayman Islands, when your own signature is on the authorization memo?" Ramsey blinked. He looked at the paper, then back at her, then at the judge. The moment was over. His confidence evaporated. And just like that, Jasmine Crockett had flipped the entire courtroom upside down. But this wasn't just a courtroom takedown. This was the start of something bigger. Because the documents she revealed didn't just expose one lie. They exposed a pattern, a network, a trail of deception leading straight to the Trump family's inner circle. And that's when it got ugly. Within minutes, social media exploded. Hashtags were trending. News anchors scrambled to update their scripts. Fox News went quiet. MSNBC ran wall-to-wall coverage. And Trump, watching from his estate, reportedly threw his phone across the room. Because what Jasmine Crockett had unleashed wasn't just a courtroom embarrassment. It was a political firestorm. The documents connected shell corporations in the Cayman Islands to foreign business deals involving Ivanka Trump and a shadowy consulting firm based in Istanbul. Money had moved. Signatures had been signed. And none of it had been disclosed on official financial records. Worse, there were emails. Crockett had printed them out. Hundreds of pages. Chain after chain showing coordination, timing, and intent. And tucked inside those emails, one damning phrase. "Make sure Jasmine never sees this." Too late. The courtroom erupted. Ramsey scrambled to object, but the judge overruled him. Crockett continued, her voice unwavering, laying out one point after another with surgical precision. She wasn't just exposing a lie. She was pulling back the curtain on a web of corruption. And at the center of that web, Donald Trump himself. What the public didn't know, and what Crockett made sure to underline, was that this case wasn't just about money. It was about power, influence, National security. Because the moment foreign governments start funneling money into a former president's network, everything changes. The questions became unavoidable. What did Trump know? When did he know it? And who was protecting him? At this point, Jeanine Pirro jumped in. Outside the courtroom, on her nightly show, she lashed out. "This is a witch hunt," she barked. "Jasmine Crockett is grandstanding. This is political theater." But Pirro's outrage couldn't stop the facts from spreading. Cable networks looped the clip of Crockett holding up the memo with Ramsey's signature. Memes flooded the internet. Influencers who had never even followed politics were suddenly asking, "Who is Jasmine Crockett? And how did she just destroy Trump's lawyer like that?" It was more than a moment. It was a movement. And behind the scenes, you could feel the panic. GOP aides whispered about damage control. Trump's legal team issued vague statements about context and selective interpretation. But no one was buying it, because the emails spoke for themselves. And the silence from Ivanka Trump's camp? Deafening. Sources close to the investigation leaked that there was growing fear of indictments, not just for the lawyers, but for senior Trump family members who had long operated in the shadows. The courtroom became the epicenter of a political earthquake, and Jasmine Crockett was right at the fault line. But she didn't gloat. She didn't grin for the cameras. She walked out of the courtroom with the same calm energy she had walked in with. The crowd outside roared, but she kept her eyes forward, because she knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The revelations were still unfolding. Reporters began digging through the emails Crockett had submitted into evidence. Investigative teams were linking previously unknown business entities to Barron Trump's trust fund, raising even more questions about how deep this went. And then came the subpoenas. Crockett filed motions the very next day, demanding full disclosure of financial records from Trump-linked companies in Dubai, Singapore, and Zurich. Each move sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Kristi Noem, a staunch Trump ally, appeared on a panel trying to dismiss the case as a distraction. "This is all noise," she said. "There's no proof any of this is illegal." But that wasn't the point, because the real danger for the Trump camp wasn't just legality, it was optics. The court of public opinion had already begun turning. Even some conservatives were quietly distancing themselves, fearing what might come next. And Crockett, she wasn't done yet. She held a press briefing the following afternoon. No teleprompter, no notes, just a podium and a microphone. "What we're seeing," she said, "isn't about party. It's about accountability. No one, no president, no lawyer, no family member is above the law." And with that, she dropped one final bombshell. A recording. A wiretap transcript from 2 years ago. Trump's lawyer, Victor Ramsey, on the phone with a foreign intermediary discussing how to keep Jasmine Crockett in the dark. The room went silent. She didn't play the full tape. Not yet. Just a snippet. Just enough. And it was enough. Because now, the story wasn't just about misused funds. It was about cover-ups, obstruction, intent. And Jasmine Crockett had just pulled the thread that could unravel it all. Reporters raced to confirm the authenticity of the audio. Ramsey's team denied everything, of course. But the damage was done. Every hour brought new leaks. A second transcript. A list of offshore accounts. A mysterious encrypted hard drive recovered during a federal raid months ago, previously dismissed as irrelevant, was now back in the spotlight. And Jasmine, she simply said, "Watch what comes next." Because this wasn't just a court case anymore. It was a reckoning. And in the middle of it stood a congresswoman who refused to be silenced, who refused to back down, and who, despite every attempt to derail her, kept coming back stronger. Jasmine Crockett had set the stage. Now the entire country was watching what would unfold next. And Trump's lawyer? He never saw it coming. The aftermath was immediate. By the following morning, every major news outlet had shifted their focus to the unfolding chaos surrounding Trump's legal team. What began as a single confrontation in a courtroom had now ignited a multi-pronged political explosion that no one, not even Trump himself, could contain. And Jasmine Crockett, she wasn't just a rising voice. She was now the center of gravity. A swirl of headlines surrounded her. Crockett drops the hammer. Congresswoman uncovers foreign funnel. Crockett versus Trump, the new political war. But behind the headlines, the real story was developing fast, and it was even more shocking than anyone expected. Federal investigators, now under pressure to act, quietly reopened two dormant cases linked to Trump's post-presidency ventures. Jasmine Crockett's bombshell courtroom evidence, especially the emails and the audio snippet, gave them fresh cause to subpoena bank records, encrypted communications, and previously inaccessible offshore account information. The deeper they looked, the darker it got, and all roads kept pointing back to one thing: deliberate concealment. The documents Jasmine exposed didn't just suggest sloppiness or oversight. They pointed to a deliberate, coordinated scheme to route money through proxies and shell corporations designed to blur accountability and disguise origins. These weren't casual missteps. These were calculated moves. And in the center of those calculations stood Victor Ramsey. The once feared Trump attorney had gone eerily quiet since the courtroom debacle. His legal team refused interviews. His media presence evaporated. And by week's end, anonymous sources confirmed he had lawyered up himself. Jasmine Crockett had forced him into retreat. But while Ramsey was cornered, others were stepping in to clean up or cover up the mess. Melania Trump, who had long remained silent on her husband's financial affairs, was now under a different kind of spotlight. Leaked emails tied her name to a consulting advisory role in a Monaco-based foundation linked to the very same Cayman accounts. And then came the footage. Someone somewhere leaked security footage from a closed-door donor meeting in Palm Beach. The quality was grainy, but the voices were clear. Trump, Ramsey, and a third man, still unidentified, discussing how to keep financial channels open without Crockett's team sniffing around. The clip went viral. The moment Jasmine saw it, she knew it confirmed everything she had warned about. This wasn't just a legal maneuver. This was a conscious attempt to evade oversight, funnel foreign influence, and silence investigators. Her response was swift. From the House Oversight Committee, she filed a motion to launch a formal congressional inquiry into intentional concealment of foreign payments by former executive officials and their counsel. A vote was scheduled. Allies rallied. Critics panicked. And the Trump camp? They did what they always do, went on the attack. Sean Hannity called her a far-left radical obsessed with Trump. Tucker Carlson accused her of weaponizing the law to crush political opposition. But the louder they screamed, the clearer it became that Jasmine's momentum couldn't be stopped. Every day brought new evidence. More emails. Wire transfer records. Whistleblower tips. One tip, from a former accountant working for a Trump-affiliated PAC, claimed that a series of irregular payments had been reclassified to hide foreign origin. Attached to the email? Screenshots of the internal ledger showing over $3 million routed through a Slovakian firm labeled only as consulting bonuses. Jasmine didn't wait. In a fiery speech on the House floor, she held up the printed records. "These are not donations," she said. "These are bribes. These are kickbacks disguised as policy consulting fees. And they were hidden because they were never meant to be found." The chamber erupted. Conservatives jeered. Progressives stood and cheered. But it didn't matter where you stood, because the facts were now undeniable. The trail was real. The cover-up was real. And Jasmine Crockett had peeled the whole thing open in front of the American people. That night, MSNBC aired a primetime special, The Crockett Files, Inside the Trump Money Machine. It featured analysts breaking down shell companies, showing how money jumped from Moscow to Singapore to New York, all while passing through hands close to Trump's inner circle. Even Barron Trump's name appeared, tied not by action, but by a trust established in his name that allegedly received funds from a mysterious Dubai investment group. The implications were enormous. Was the Trump family preparing financial shields for future generations? Was this part of a longer game? Jasmine didn't speculate. She didn't have to, because by now, the Department of Justice was watching. Quietly, federal investigators contacted her office, requesting access to the raw data she had introduced in court. Within days, subpoenas went out to multiple Trump-aligned organizations. It was happening, but not without resistance. As Jasmine pressed forward, the right-wing media launched an all-out smear campaign. Old videos, misquoted interviews, dubious ethics concerns. They threw everything at her, but it didn't stick, because Jasmine Crockett was ready. In interview after interview, she remained composed, defiant, and clear. They want to distract from the truth, she said on CNN. They're scared, not of me, but of what I found. And what she found next sent the Trump defense team into a full-blown meltdown. A confidential informant from inside the Trump organization came forward. He provided internal meeting notes, handwritten memos, and, most damning of all, a private recording of a strategy session just 2 weeks before the initial court hearing. On that recording, Ramsey, planning how to delay disclosure until after the election, explicitly referencing Jasmine Crockett by name, laughing about bogging her down in committee red tape. The arrogance was chilling, and it backfired spectacularly. Once again, Jasmine brought it to the committee floor. This time, the tape played out loud. Every smug word, every calculated move, every moment of contempt for the rule of law. And when it ended, the room was silent. Then Jasmine asked a single question. Is this who we are? She didn't need to say anything else. The moment echoed across every network. Polls showed a dramatic shift in public opinion. Even moderate Republicans began calling for full transparency. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted for Trump's allies to cut ties. Victor Ramsey, now under criminal investigation, issued a cryptic statement through his attorney. I will cooperate fully. But it was too late. The damage was done. Trump himself issued a long, rambling post on Truth Social, calling Jasmine a phony radical and accusing her of planting fake evidence. But his fury only made him look more unstable. The facts were too clear, the paper trail too precise. And Jasmine, she never flinched, even as threats poured in, even as her security detail was doubled, even as right-wing pundits called for her resignation. She kept going, kept pushing, kept demanding truth, because now the stakes were even higher. An emergency Senate hearing was scheduled. J.D. Vance, trying to defend the Trump camp, went head-to-head with Crockett during a joint session. It didn't end well for him. When he tried to dismiss the evidence as circumstantial, Jasmine leaned forward, held up a chart, and calmly said, then explained the signatures, Senator. One of them is yours. The chamber gasped, because it was true. J.D. Vance had co-signed a foreign advisory letter endorsing the very firm implicated in Jasmine's findings. And he had forgotten, or hoped no one would notice. But Jasmine noticed. She always does. That moment went viral. Again, headlines exploded. Crockett corners Vance. Jasmine drops another bombshell. Her approval ratings soared. She became the face of a new political movement, one demanding accountability not just from Trump, but from anyone who had enabled him. Meanwhile, whispers grew louder inside Trump's inner circle. Advisors were jumping ship. Donors were backing away. And according to insiders, Ivanka Trump privately told friends she was furious at how badly her father's legal team had mishandled the situation. But the truth? There was no way to handle it. Not when the evidence was real. Not when the receipts were public. Not when Jasmine Crockett had already won the court of public opinion and was now winning in the courts themselves. The Justice Department officially confirmed that a federal investigation had been opened into foreign financial activity linked to former executive officials. They didn't name names. They didn't have to. Everyone knew what that meant. And in the middle of it all, Jasmine Crockett stood tall. One woman, one voice, armed with facts, fearless under pressure, and absolutely relentless in her pursuit of the truth. She wasn't finished. Not even close. Because in the final twist of the saga, an encrypted hard drive, once considered irrelevant, was decrypted by forensic analysts. What it contained shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Emails, timestamps, personal notes, and a full, confidential Trump legal strategy document titled, How to Survive Crockett. It wasn't satire. It was real. A full chapter devoted to discrediting her public image. Another on weaponizing ethics complaints. The final page? A list of donors willing to fund counter-investigations against her. Jasmine brought it straight to Congress. I want the American people to see this, she said. And they did. The document leaked. Public support surged. The Trump camp went into full-blown retreat. Ramsey was indicted. Trump family members were subpoenaed. And Jasmine, she stood at the center of history. Not for fame, not for power, but because she had the courage to ask the questions no one else would, to follow the money, to speak truth to power. And in doing so, she didn't just destroy a lawyer. She exposed an empire, a shadow empire built on lies, hidden money, and foreign influence. And for the first time in a long time, someone had the courage to stand up and say, no more. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a rising political star anymore. She was a symbol, a reckoning, a force. And as the nation watched, still reeling from the revelations she had uncovered, one thing became clear. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.